All right, we are going to start day three here. Turn around, Andrew. All right. Okay, they were trying to figure out who everybody was at. Okay, we are going to get into the Egyptian civilization today and kind of talk about Egypt. When we think of Egypt, one of the things to always keep in mind is that the focal point of Egypt is around the Nile. The Nile and its system of pharaohs is going to be the the aspects that we find most prevalent within Egyptian society. And um, looking at the geography of Egypt, one of the things that you find with the Nile River is the Nile River provides that um, excellent transportation. It is the artery of Egypt. Without the Nile, Egypt doesn't exist because there's literally desert on both sides of the Nile River, but it's the constant flow of the Nile that brings new soil and irrigation that allows crops to be grown along the Nile River and allows Egypt to flourish. Now, within Egypt, we're going to see that Egypt, you guys are flickering over there. Egypt will really last for a good 4,000 years. That the Egyptian civilization kind of developed over that time period, but certainly did not have a lot of turmoil like we saw with Sumeria. And with the pharaohs, remember that the pharaohs were really kind of seen as gods within Egyptian society. And there's another term down on your list, the Mata. You see that down on your list? Okay, that uh, that kind of is related to the pharaohs because the thing to remember about uh, uh, the pharaohs is that the pharaohs derived their um, their power from the gods, and that fundamental principle of mata means order and harmony. Mata means order and harmony, and it was that mata or that order and harmony that we see as that the divine instrument of the pharaoh's power. That Mata is where they're drawing from the gods to provide a constant civilization. And certainly, when you take the whole of Egyptian society, uh, rather long periods of peace and prosperity that take place in Egypt, very little turmoil compared to Sumeria. And even if we look at our present day world that we live in, you know, the United States has been around for 100 or 230 some odd years. We've had a lot of turmoil in our history. Uh, Theirs was often very peaceful, things of that nature. So, uh, where the pharaohs were seen as gods on or gods on earth, they and did have absolute power. A lot of times, they're trying to rule with that order and harmony, in order to make sure that, hey, this is what we've done before. We've always done it this way. Traditional life was very important for Egypt. Now, compared to Mesopotamian society, Egyptian society was more rural. You don't think when you're thinking of Egyptian society of as large of city states as you saw in Sumeria. A lot of the population in Egypt is strung down along the Nile. A lot of people are farmers. and working the fields that way. You do have times where people are coming together, working on building projects for the good of the whole. Okay, now within Egyptian history, remember we're talking roughly 4,000 years of history that they're in, and we see that historians have traditionally broken down into three different distinctive time periods, and we refer to those as the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. And we're gonna kind of talk about a few of those, or some of the things that take place in each of those kingdoms. Um, when you think of the Old Kingdom, it's during the Old Kingdoms that the Great Pyramids of Giza are built, uh, and, um, and it's during this time period that Egypt in the Old Kingdom is really kind of broken down into Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Now, when I say Upper and Lower Egypt, we got to think in of a different way because Lower Egypt is is the part of Egypt that connects along the Nile from the Mediterranean southward. Okay, so looking at a map, it's actually the northern part of Egypt, but it's the Lower Egypt, and the Upper Egypt is the southern part of Egypt along the Nile River. Does anybody know why that they're going to have those two reversed? Say that again. It's not. It's not because of the equator. We also have. Does anybody know which way the Nile flows? It doesn't flow backwards. It does not flow south. It's the the Nile River flows north. Now, in our Western Hemisphere point of view, all of our rivers tend to empty out into the Gulf of Mexico in this area. And so we think of all of our rivers eventually flowing southward. The Nile River flows northward. So that is why when we say the lower kingdom, uh, as being that part where we're talking about the delta part of the Nile River emptying into the Mediterranean, and the upper uh, further south. Now, one of the things that we see within the Old Kingdom is um, uh, that Egypt was broken down into different provinces or nomes, as it's written there. So, nomes means province, and during the Old Kingdom, there were 22 of these nomes in Upper Egypt, Nomes. It's on the list, and in Lower Egypt, there were 20 nomes. Now, gnomes. Go ahead. Uh, in the upper, there are 22. In the lower, there are 20. Now, the next term says a nomarch. That is a governor. So you've got somebody in charge of these different administrative areas. And think of it in terms of this way: if you've got a very rural population, your population is spread out. You need a way to effectively control your kingdom, and certainly having one person that you can go to that can make sure that things are running smoothly in the area is a lot easier than trying to bring everybody in um, uh, into accordance. Eventually, moving into that middle kingdom, you are going to see let me say this: during the Old Kingdom, you did see a pharaoh in Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, where you actually had two different pharaohs ruling at the same time. It's during the Middle Kingdom that you're going to see uh, those two, or Egypt being connected and being controlled from one standpoint, where you just have one pharaoh controlling all of Egypt, moving into the Middle Kingdom. Now, the Middle Kingdom time period was really known as that a golden age of Egypt during the Middle Kingdom, and one one of the reasons that you see it as that golden age is that it saw a lot of prosperity. A lot of things were consistent during the Middle Kingdom. Uh, Pharaohs had a lot of public welfare programs, and when I say welfare, think of it in terms of more public works, uh, things that were designed to better the lives of its people. And so people were kept busy, people were kept fed, uh, people's lives were constant. And so you had a long period within that time period when Egypt flourished. Now, I'm going to come back to the Hyksos because it just doesn't flow where it's at right now. Um, we're going to talk about the Egyptian economy. I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit. Because New Kingdom, you are going to see some other things because it is during the time period that there is some invasion take place during that time period. You're also going to see some other um, inventions come in during the New Kingdom. Now, under its economy, um, Egypt's economy relied heavily on agriculture. That was one of the mainstays of getting people to do what you needed to do, especially when you can have wheat and barley uh, raised along the Nile River, uh, and you could items that could be stored for a number of years in granaries and be able to be divided out in times of need. There just was that cycle of life that they knew when to plant, when not to plant, because if you planted too early, the spring floods would come and wipe out your crops, and so they knew that you had to wait till a certain date before planting. Um, let's see. Let's talk about some of the Egyptian gods. I've listed just a few of the Egyptian gods. Uh, One thing to remember is that in Egyptian society is that Egypt is polytheistic. Also, we'll talk about a time period later on when they do have a pharaoh that tries to institute a monotheistic rule, and it doesn't uh, um, uh, happen or doesn't go over too well. But Horus, does anybody know what Horus was in charge of? What's that? Say it again. Smithing would fall in there, but kind of god of vengeance is Horus. He was also the god of the kings or the pharaohs. Is that he generally looked after the kings. So if you needed somebody, had a problem with somebody and you wanted to, have them smite or something, you'd be praying to Horus to, hey, go take care of that person for me. Ra was the sun god. What? Ray. Ray and Ra is the same thing. It can be R-A or R-E, either way. Yeah. Yeah, because when I first saw it, I was like going ooh, and did a little bit more research, and it's the same one. Oh, what's that? Say that again. Ra sounds better instead of Ray. Osiris. Osiris was the Egyptian god that was associated with the afterlife, and probably within Egyptian society, Osiris was probably the most closely related with mummification. And although the test doesn't have really any questions about the mummification process, I always like the mummification process. Yeah, they got this little pick to shove up your nose when you're dead and scramble your brains and then kind of pull them out through your nose and take your organs out and wrap them, put those in canopic jars, and then take care of them that way. Uh, Isis, she was the goddess of motherhood, fertility, and magic. I think it's because they put magic there, is because women would always cast a spell over the men. Isn't that about right? Women cast the spells, make us do things we shouldn't. Sometimes, yeah. Maybe it's because men are the weaker of the two sexes, you think. Okay, now with Osiris, a lot of times, and especially early on, the preservation of the body for the afterlife was often reserved for the wealthy because the wealthy could afford it. Certainly, as years go by and techniques become better, uh, uh, other nobles are mummified, and even some lesser class people that can afford it will have it. But generally, it was reserved for the wealthy because they were the ones that could afford it. And like I said, when you think of the pyramids, we often think of them. They were the tombs for those pharaohs that were used to be able to prepare them for the next life. What was that, Shelby? Are you sure? Okay. Okay. Egyptian art. Uh, some of the things that when we look at Egyptian culture and we look at some of the things that they left behind, realize that uh, Egyptian art was its primary function. It was more functional and not intended to add beauty. So its primary function uh, it was primarily used for a functional purpose to tell stories, to present something in a certain way, and it really wasn't intended to add beauty to certain aspects. Uh, uh, Although I like when I of time periods of history, I think it does have a very um, um, certain aspect that draws you into and wants you to study more about Egyptian art. We do see that Egyptian art was highly stylized. When I say stylized, we're talking about it followed strict formulas governing proportions, form, and proportions. There was uh, really uh, formulas governing form and proportions. People had to be presented in a certain way. The way that it was presented, uh, there was not a whole lot of leeway. In Egyptian art, you don't see everybody is very fit. You don't see anybody that is misshapen in Egyptian art, and there's um, a general style that gets passed down. Now, there is one exception, and that takes place under uh, Amenhotep the Fourth. He was a pharaoh during the New Kingdom, and during his reign, uh, you see some changes in art take place. Um, Amenhotep the Fourth had actually um, had art changed, where even in his uh, depiction, he is seen with a larger than normal head. Um, he's got more of a pear-shaped body. When I see figurines of Amenhotep the Fourth, I think of Roger off of American Dad. Anybody American Dad? The alien, yeah. Which you know, some of the things that you see on the History Channel on Ancient Aliens say that, well, was Amenhotep an alien because he's got a larger than normal head? It tends to be elongated. Um, and like I said, if you see pictures of Amenhotep, just the body style that he's given, a lot of times reminds me of Roger off of American Dad. So if you see some pictures of the two, I see a resemblance. Other people may not see it, but Amenhotep, we do see with him, along with that art change, is that there's also that a temporary installation of a monotheistic Egyptian culture, where he really tries to get rid of all the other gods except one. I think it's all except Ra that he's trying to get rid of, and it does not go over well. Once his reign is done, Egypt goes back to a polytheistic. Um, well, I think it's toward, yeah. Some pharaohs did get assassinated. I want to say with him, with his life. Um, because Amenhotep, I believe he's related to Tutankhamun, because there is that a little bit um, of trying to have a monotheistic under King Tut, but it eventually it rather quickly goes back. It's one of those things that it's always more of a mystery, and you got to realize that all of our Egyptian history we get is from their writings, and so it's, you know, it's you're trying to decipher what they've written about themselves. It's like having you guys write autobiography or reading an autobiography and somebody's not all truthful with what they've done in their life. Okay. Also, during the New Kingdom, uh, you do see um, other uh, other areas around Egypt in Asia Minor gaining strength and moving into Egypt. One of them being the Hyksos. With the Hyksos, we're going to see that for a time period that Egypt um, is conquered by the Hyksos, and um, although their rule does not last very long, there is some things that take place, and the Hyksos will invade during the New Kingdom. And the Hyksos, they were a Semitic people that come into Egypt in the 17th century BC. Now, with the Hyksos, some of the things that they do bring with them is the use of bronze and chariots. Certainly, chariots make a more formidable weapon of war, bronze being harder than copper, and allowing new things to be built. Okay, some other things to get down about the New Kingdom. Know that it's during this time period that the Egyptians became the most powerful state in the Near East. Well, they kicked them out. They kicked the Hyksos out, and they actually have um, a very. It's during this time period that they have a very strong military, a more professional military is built. Now, one of one of the things to also keep in mind, Patrick, is that you're talking about a good 1,000 years. Within 1,000 years, you can have some very good things, and you can have some very crummy things. Because at the end of the New Kingdom, you are going to see Egypt, um, its power wane and go down. No, you will have the Hittites will eventually come in. And Hittites don't last very long. We'll talk about the Hittites now. The Hittites were an Indo-European speaking group of people. Indo-European, we're talking about that they probably traveled from Upper Asia Minor uh, into um, um, into Egypt. Another thing that we see with the Hittites that they do is that they brought knowledge of iron weapons. But once again, we are going to see that after a brief stay, that they are finally driven back out of Egypt. Yes. Uh, well, yeah. Let me finish up with that, and then I'll get to Stonehenge. Let's see. What was the last thing I had there? Which one? Egyptian social life. All right. Egyptian social life. Let's see. Some of the things that we do see within Egyptian social life that persists for long periods of time that we can add. Okay, within Egyptian social life, we see that women, by and large, had equal legal rights with men. Uh, Also, we see part of their social life with women. Women's primary role in the family was to produce children. Large families were often common. And when it comes to the upper class in Egyptian society, what do you think they probably did? Probably had more babies. Yeah, they had devoted much of their time to entertainment. You know, because if you're part of that upper level class, you probably had other people doing your work, and so just kind of like back then, or as it is today, the rich enjoyed the spoils of society over what lower class people did. Now, towards the end of the New Kingdom, we do see a gradual lessening in the power of the pharaohs over its neighbors, where meaning that eventually, towards the end of the New Kingdom, pharaohs have less and less power. And eventually, you are going to see other stronger nations be able to move in and subjugate Egypt. But certainly, when you're talking about 4,000 year run, I think they did quite well. I just hope the United States can keep a good, 500-year run, if not long. You don't think we're going to get a 4,000 year run? That, well, that is a long run. So how many more years, Patrick, do you give us? Okay, so through your lifetime, wouldn't you like your children or grandchildren to have a little bit more better life there? Okay, Patrick's Patrick's not going to have any kids. All right. Okay, a few other things about Egyptian social life. Know that uh, divorce was accepted as legal under the law in Egyptian society. So guys had to take care of the girls. Uh, there was an acceptance of divorce as legal under the law. We see, we've already talked about how women had more equal rights of men, so female children were treated well and were valued in Egyptian society. We also see that in Egyptian society, obviously, we talked about the upper class uh, devoting a lot of their time to entertainment, but even for other social classes, things such as music, games, and hunting were important to all classes. Talked about the Hittites. All right. All right. We're going to go down to Stonehenge. Um, while Egypt is going on, you also see other cultures in Europe, which we often refer to as the megalith culture or the construction of megaliths, such as Stonehenge. And Stonehenge is probably the most famous of all megalith constructions. But people after 4000 BC, we see that growing um, uh, uh, megaliths. We see that uh, uh, more fascination with astronomy. And when you think of like Stonehenge, Stonehenge is a one of these sites that they have been able to calculate and say yes, uh, an early observatory that's following the stars. Whether it had a religious aspect towards that is often associated with the Druids there in England. A lot of people speculate that the Druids came well after it was already built. But you can also find megalith constructions along the coast in Europe, where the question comes: why did these people, drag these 1,000-pound rocks that are nowhere close to the quarry site along? What's that? Easter Island has that same aspect, but certainly Easter Island is a megalith society, but it has carving. Is it almost time for the bell? Uh, we're going to finish this up here, and we'll be done. So when you think of like Stonehenge, think of it as an observatory that it was built to observe the cycles of the stars. Yep. All right, Indo-European languages. The book talked about different types, and I want to give you some to know for the test. Know that Sanskrit is an Indo-European language. Sanskrit, German, is a Indo-European language, and also Latin is an Indo-European language. What's that?